Well, today, friends, we have left the Gospel of John, chapter 6, and we are in Mark, chapter 7. And yet again, Jesus is talking about food. He's talking about food again. And this time it has to do with the eating of food. Now, there was an underlying reference in this gospel passage that those who were listening were very concerned about what we might know of today as kosher. Right? If you have friends who are Jewish, or you yourself have been Jewish, right, you know that eating kosher is very important and that it has to do with ethical eating and certain types of cleaning. So Jesus was saying to them, you can eat whatever you want, but it has to do with what's on the inside. Now, let's put that to the side for a moment. The cleaning piece of this, right? The ritual cleanliness, and then there's physical cleanliness. Most of us don't say we're going to wash our hands because the tradition of the elders told you to do it, right? Nowadays, we wash our hands because we think it's science. It's medical knowledge, right? We know that germs can affect us negatively. If we don't wash our hands, we could get sick when we eat. We know that. That's a fact, right? So the Pharisees specifically, were calling on the tradition of the elders. So all this sort of arguing back and forth with Jesus about, what is the right thing to do. And Jesus again says, look, guys, you've kind of missed the point here. Because the cleanliness really doesn't matter if you're not clean on the inside. Now, if you know anything about the ritual cleanliness in Judaism, mikvah, for instance, if you know someone who's been a convert, right? So there would be something that's being immersed in a bath, which is similar to our baptism in that you are washed, right? Washed clean and pure. But it's also something that would be done any time that there was ritual impurity. So you would go back and go through this process of washing. So again, it would serve the purpose of cleaning you on the outside. But as you know with our baptism, right, our font is just right here. As you know with baptism, it's not really about taking a bath, because usually the baby has already been cleaned when they come to church, right? It's not like you need a bigger bathtub. It has more to do with a cleansing that is internal, that is God, right, cleansing us. And in our baptism, we're welcoming you into the family of Christ so that you can be a part of this loving community and ultimately a part of the love that God is offering. Now, in the epistle of James, we have a great example of what Jesus is trying to get at. James digs a little bit deeper, and he has this phrase, which you heard in our collect this morning. If any think they are religious and do not bridle their tongues, but deceive their hearts, their religion is worthless. Religion that is pure and undefiled before God, the Father, is this: to care for orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself unstained by the world. Now, our collect talks about true religion, having a pure and undefiled religion. Now, that could mean always looking your best when you show up for Sunday morning. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But I think it also has to do with what is on the inside. And James goes deeper. So he talks about the first fruits, that we are essentially the first fruits of God's creation. Well, in the Old Testament, the first fruits would have been brought out and offered to God. Why? Because God has given us so much that we want to give the best back to God. And we say, thank you. Here's the best that we have. We give it to you, God, because we love you as you love us. So that's where James starts. The first fruits, right? We are the first fruits. Everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Be doers of the word, not merely hearers. Now, the slow to speak and the slow to anger, sometimes this passage, I fear, has been misinterpreted. This doesn't mean you can't get angry. That's not what it's saying. Also doesn't mean you can't voice your thoughts or opinions. However, I would offer it does encourage us to invite God into that process, to maybe take a moment and pause, to say a prayer, right? To be slow to anger is to not react. And in doing that, I think we can tap into the love that God has for us and the love and compassion that Jesus showed. Because Jesus, frankly, if you read the Gospels very closely, Jesus would have been offensive to many people because he spoke his mind and he was very clear. But he was so compassionate. His love was undeniable. So I think this piece is really important. Love, right? How are we loving God? How are we loving our community? Well, there was the founder of the Jesuit order, Ignatius of Loyola, St. Ignatius. And Ignatius wrote this poem about love. Love consists in sharing what one has and what one is with those one loves. Love ought to show itself in deeds more than in words. Love consists in sharing what one has and what one is with those one loves. Love ought to show itself in deeds more than in words. So Ignatius knew what we're hearing about both in our gospel passage and in James today. He knew that to be doers of the word and not simply hearers meant that you have to live out your faith. So the Pharisees, I think Jesus is pinpointing to be hearers of the word, right? Their actions are not matching their words. And even more than that, their words seem to be empty. Because they're going through the rituals, but their heart does not seem to be in what we would call the right place. And so how is that love? Or what are they loving in that situation, right? So my question for you all today is to think about how and where does your life reflect God's love? How are you being that reflection in not only what you have, but who you are? And how you present yourself to the world, how you present yourself to the community. Now again, all of us have bad days. Slow to anger, slow to speak does not mean you never speak or that you never get angry. But it does mean that we continue to call on God in our best moments and in our worst. And to not forget that God wants what is best for us. Right? To be the first fruits and to bring the first fruits means that this whole notion of cleanliness is also bringing our best to God. If you've ever been on a date or you have ever been to a really important event, you usually take a shower and dress up, right? That's just what we do because it's a way to show respect. In many ways, it's an offer of love. To say, I care about you, whoever I'm meeting. I care about myself. So to be the first fruits means to offer our best with God's help, right? So that's my prayer for you all today, is that you would go home and you would reflect. How does my life show God's love? And maybe it starts with loving yourself first. And then it goes out from there. So I will close with the poem from Ignatius. Love consists in sharing what one has and what one is with those one loves. Love ought to show itself in deeds more than in words. Amen.